So, welcome everyone to today's Tuesday talk through In Control Scotland on Tuesday, the 6th of October 2020. And today we are welcoming back Dr. Danielle Farrel to Tuesday Talks because it's the first Tuesday of the month. And Danielle is on World Cerebral Palsy Day. So, without any further ado, I'm gonna exit stage left and leave Danielle with today's Tuesday talk.
Thanks, Keith. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Tuesday Talks. As Keith said, I'm going to be talking about cerebral palsy and raising awareness of the condition. I'd just like to point out, as people tend to go by the clock behind me, my clock isn't working at the minute, so if you see me looking at my phone or my watch, it's only to ensure that I'm keeping time. I have today is World Cerebral Palsy Day, and it was important to me to talk about the condition today because I am one of the people, 17 million people, I think it is, in the world who live with cerebral palsy. So for me, it was important that was the topic of being Danielle today. So if Keith would kindly bring up some slides that I've prepared, I'll help with today's talk. So yeah, today's World Cerebral Palsy Day, as we just said, and the ribbon that you see in the background of the slide is the logo for cerebral palsy, and it's green. So that is why the banner across the bottom has changed to green for this month's being Danielle. And the other photo in the slide you see now is of my tattoo on my left arm, and it's the only tattoo I have because I swore that when I got a tattoo, if I got a tattoo, it would be something that's important to me. And usually within the cerebral palsy ribbon is hope, believe, love, and faith. But that was too big, so I chose to have hope and believe put in the ribbon because those are words that sort of go with my view of cerebral palsy, and you won't see the whole of my t-shirt today, but my t-shirt says, if you tell somebody with cerebral palsy they can't do something, they'll do it twice and take pictures. And if you know me, that sums my attitude up to my CP, because I don't let my CP stop me from achieving what I want to achieve. So if Keith would kindly move on to the first slide. So the history of cerebral palsy, or World Cerebral Palsy Day, is that the campaign was first called Change the World in 1 Minute. And the campaign sought to find ideas globally for technologies and other sort of innovative ideas that would help the disabled community. But then the ideas that were being put forward were primarily used to help people with CP, so it very, very quickly became renamed at that point to change the world for people living with CP, and then later it became World Cerebral Palsy Day. In 2012, more than 470 ideas were posted on the World CP Day website. Three of these ideas were shortlisted, and it went out to inventors, and a research team from the University of Virginia in America won the major prize. And as part of this, they developed a prototype solar-powered wheelchair, which was an idea posted on the website. And once they designed the prototype, it was presented to Alper Servin, the man that came up with the idea initially at World CPD Day in 2013. So I'll be honest and say that when I was preparing the presentation for today, that I learned a lot about CP and a lot I didn't know, despite the fact that I live with the condition and have done for the past 34 years. So yeah, that was a lot of information that I didn't know, but it puts into perspective that how World TP Day became what it is now, and how it became as widely recognised as it is now. So Keith, if you would move on to the second slide, and that just continues some information, and to say that in 2015 it became a social movement that targets 6 key issues that affect people living with CP, and this is regardless of geographical, cultural, or economic differences. So it doesn't matter where you live in the world, what your social or economic status is. The campaign looks primarily at people living with CP and doesn't take it in any of these other factors. And what I should say that perhaps missed on the slide was there are charities in Scotland that do things to celebrate World Cerebral Palsy Day, and one of those was last week. They used to be called Bobath, but now they're called Cerebral Palsy Scotland, and they treat adults and children with cerebral palsy, and they have a conference every year. Obviously, because of current restrictions, this year it had to be done virtually. But normally it's a big event in a hotel, usually in Glasgow, and I would normally go and exhibit with Europe's Enlisted Services, but obviously we weren't able to do that. But that's just one example of some of the big events that happen a bit more locally in relation to cerebral palsy awareness and on Cerebral Palsy Day. Keith, can you move on to the next slide? So, excuse me, we're looking at the timeline now. So, back in 1810, Dr. William Little was born, and he was the first person to study cerebral palsy. And then I think a little bit later on, it was in 1932, the first folding wheelchair was invented by Harry Jennings. And I think when you think about the wheelchairs that are offer now, and even the one I'm sitting in now doing this talk to you guys, with you guys, I think it's really amazing to think how far like inventions like wheelchairs have come, and what they offer now as opposed to what they would have offered in 1932. And in 1948, a key cerebral palsy organisation was founded, and this was the Cerebral Palsy Association. Was formed to help people living with the condition to receive better diagnosis, treatment, and funding. One of the organisations I've just mentioned, Cerebral Palsy Scotland, that's another example of one of the many organisations, I guess, that have been founded since then that can help people with CP. But that, I guess, the one in 1948 was the starting point for all these that followed. Keith, if you would go on to the next slide, please. And just continuing on from that. So in 1949, a year later, a major mental health agency was created, and this was the National Institute for Mental Health, and this was funded and not organised to assist those with mental disabilities, and I copied that. I copied that from the information. I know that we don't tend to use pages like mental disability now, because it's derogatory, and it'd be not PC, I guess, and that's right. We shouldn't be using pages like that because everybody's an individual, and some of these pages are absolutely awful when you think about today's society, but the reason I did keep that in was because it was important for me to show that how we've moved on in the terminology that we use, and how people's terminology should have changed. But I'm sure some of you guys watching it, like myself, will know some examples where terminology hasn't changed as much as it should have. So yeah, that's why it was important for me to use some of the previous language that was used. And in 2002, the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention in America again undertook the first US cross-country study on the prevalence and impact of cerebral palsy, and there's been many studies done since then that looks at many things, many contributing factors that can contribute to the lives of those with cerebral palsy. But to use some more recent example, given the challenging times that we are now living in, Cerebral Palsy Scotland and other organisations like it did studies around how lockdown and the prospect of being asked for a DNA if people with CP contracted COVID are just some of the examples and more recent examples of studies around CP that were done. Keith, if you would move on to the next one. So one of the key things I would say about cerebral palsy is that no two people are the same. If there was 5, 10 people in this room with me now, and we all had CP, every single one of us would be different. And a lot of that is to do with what part of the brain has been affected or damaged, if you want to use that phrase, as a result of the CP. So these are just some of the facts that sum up CP. So it's a complex disability. It's very complex. It's a very wide spectrum, and as I've just said, no two people are the same. 1 in 4 children with CP cannot talk. This is not to say they can't communicate, they might just use aids to do so, but they can't communicate verbally. 1 in 4 cannot walk. I guess I am one of those 1 in 4, because I can stand and I can wait there, but I can't walk any distance. 1 in 2 have an intellectual disability. 1 in 4 have epilepsy, and this is probably a good time to say that sometimes, or often with CP, and everybody's example being unique. So I can only tell you my experience and how CP affects me, but if you were to talk to like 10 other people, I'm sure they would tell you a different story. But for me, I don't have a lot of in fact, I really don't have any of the contributing other conditions that might come with CP. I don't have epilepsy or learning difficulty or anything like that. And I was told by one medical professional that this only happens in like 20% of people with CP, that they don't have any other symptoms or factors. So I guess when you look at the facts, it sort of puts it into perspective how CP is such a wide spectrum, and CP is a lifelong disability and there isn't any cure. So if it affects everybody differently and it will affect each person throughout their life. And at the moment there is no cure, but there are aids and treatments and stuff that will help people live a fulfilling life. Kate, if you go on to the next slide, please. So I thought I would share some of my story of living with CP, but I thought the best way to do this was through pictures. And some of you watching might know some of my story, but for the purpose of raising awareness on CP and it being World Cerebral Palsy Day, I thought I would do it through photos and mention some small parts of information that are specifically related to my CP. So these are just a range of photos. So you've got me and my mum on my first day at school. You've got myself and my dad at a fairground ride. You've got me riding my bike. And then the bottom you've got me in the middle of two of my friends who just so happen not to have a disability. And I think my reason for wanting to tell my story today using pictures was for the fact that I guess every family and every parent will have their different approaches to dealing with CP, and there's no right or wrong, and nobody should be condemned for how they deal with it or how they live with CP. But for me, I was never wrapped up in cotton wool. I was told you will achieve it. You might find another way, have to do it in a way that's not conventional, but you will do it. So, for example, riding my bike. So I had to get an adapted bike, but I still rode my bike. And I know from talking to my mum and learning things about what they had to deal with before I was old enough to deal with things myself. I wasn't diagnosed with CP until I was about a year and a half, when I wasn't reaching the normal milestones like sitting up and walking and taking those first steps. My mum was told when I was diagnosed that I would never be able to call her mum and I would never be able to stick out my tongue. And my mum's response to that was to go and buy me an ice lolly to make me stick out my tongue. And as you've just heard, I was able to call her mum. So I am not saying that people that make these diagnoses don't know, but I think sometimes it's to do with the determination of the person, of the child, and of the parents, and just what support is available at the time, I guess. Yeah. So and for me, some of those pictures just show that how barriers were broken down for me before I was old enough to break them down for myself. and how I was treated no differently to my non-disabled peers. At the time, if you go on to the next slide, please, that's just a couple more photos. There's like, again, some of you watching might have already seen this. So the first photo on the left was is when I graduated with my PhD, and the photo on the right is on the day of my graduation with my dad, his partner, and my older brother. Unfortunately, due to ill health, my mum passed away when I was 60. But because of my mum's outlook to my CP, it has made me determined and to fulfill my life in the way she would have encouraged me to, if she was here today, and she remains my motivation for everything I do, if I'm honest. So it was just important for me to share those photos and show that CP doesn't really need to affect any aspect of a person's life. Obviously, it will affect everybody so differently, but it doesn't need to be a barrier. If you need to do things differently, you can, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And in the last couple of slides, if Keith moves it on, I talk about some of the myths, and I hope that in sharing some short snippets of my story, these myths are shown to you as something that can be broken down. So the first one of those is that CP is a progressive condition. It's not. Sometimes as you get older, symptoms might change, but that's because your body's getting older, and that happens to anybody, regardless of having a disability. If I'm honest, the things that have changed for me are I now have some pain in my feet, which I didn't have when I was younger, and some pain in my shoulder, but that's probably about it. But again, everybody's experience will be different. But I guess the main point there is it's not a progressive condition. Sometimes people assume that it is because they associate it with other neurological conditions that are progressive, but CP on its own is not a progressive condition. People with CP can't live independently. That is ridiculous. I am sitting in my living room now. Before we came on live now. At 2, I had a brief conversation with Keith, saying that it's been 4 years on Saturday since I moved into my own house. What people sometimes mix up when they think and talk about people living independently is that living independently means on your own and without support. It doesn't. I have support for every aspect of daily living, but I still live in my own house. I still run my own house. I live independently from my dad. My dad is my dad now, not my carer, and that's so important for me to have that father-daughter relationship with my dad. I am not, and my battle to live independently could be a completely other PowerPoint, and I'm not going to go into that now, but the fact that I'm sitting in my own living room now, doing this live broadcast for you guys now, shows that how much of a myth that is. Children with cerebral palsy can't communicate. Again, if I wasn't able to communicate, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right this second. But as I've already said, there's many people with CP that might not be able to communicate verbally. but they can still communicate, whether that's by using sign language, a communication aid like a type of computer, or by facial expressions, or any other aid that can be used, like cue cards and things. There's many aids that people with CP and other conditions and disabilities can use. So the fact to say that they can't communicate is totally wrong. And the last one on this slide is that children with CP are intellectually disabled. When I looked at the statistics yesterday, as it turned out in these statistics, people with CP are over half of people with CP have an intellectual disability, according to the figures I looked at. But again, that's not true of everybody, because I don't have an intellectual disability or a learning disability. According to the figures I looked at, again, an intellectual disability and a learning disability were treated as two separate entities, I guess. And over half people living with CP have an intellectual disability. But again, it goes back to the whole yes, never assuming sort of thing that we always talk about with people with disabilities, and the fact that assuming can make an ass out of you and me. So again, you shouldn't assume just because you met one person with CP, doesn't mean the next person you meet or work with is going to be the same. And I guess that would be something I would be hoping that somebody would take away from today. But if Keith would move on to the next slide, there's just some more myths. CP is the same for everyone. I think I've talked a lot about in the last in the last 20 minutes or so. That CP isn't the same for everyone. And everybody can be so different. It's such a wide spectrum, similar to autism and things like that. Cerebral palsy is caused by medical malpractice. That's not always the case. Cerebral palsy can occur before, during, or after birth. For me, it was more likely to be after birth, because I stopped breathing due to being premature. Because it happens a lot in premature babies. I was 11 weeks premature, so rather than being born in the March of 1986, I'm one of those annoying people that have a birthday just straight after Christmas, and I hate it, but it is what it is. Obviously, some family members have joked at me over the years and said, "Oh, you couldn't wait to be here." And sometimes they just say, if we'll be honest, and say, I have wondered if 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 my mum had carried me full term, whether I would have CP, or my life would be totally different, and it probably would be different, but I don't know how different in another world. No. So for me, it's just you can't help but wonder, but at the same time, without my CP, I wouldn't be the person I am today. But again, it's just a small part of who I am. So, yeah, I think that'd be another important message from today's Tuesday Talks. Anybody with any disability, but for CP today, because it's World Cerebral Palsy Day, the CP is only a small part of who a person is. one of the other miss I came across when I was reading was it parenting a child with CP is overwhelming. That sort of frustrated me a bit because obviously I've never been a parent, least of all a parent of a child with a disability. But my understanding of parenthood would be that it's overwhelming, that it can be overwhelming regardless of whether somebody has a disability or not. For many contributing factors. Um, and there should be loads of different support out there for people who are parenting people with CP or child with CP or any other disability. So, even in the information I read, it said there's loads of support out there, so it shouldn't be any more overwhelming than maybe parenting an undisabled child. But and I guess at some point, depending on you how the CP affects the child, it can be overwhelming, and I'm not meaning to diminish that in any way. You don't know until you're living that experience, but it sort of annoyed me because the way it was written implied that parents would only feel overwhelmed if they were parenting a child with CP, and that's not correct. And I'm sure any parent out there watching would agree with that. And a child with cerebral palsy has a limited future. That's the last point there. And that is certainly not the case, nor should it be the case. I think I've shown in some of the photos I've shared today that it's not been the case for me, and it shouldn't be the case for any child with CP, regardless of how it affects them. They should be encouraged to achieve any goal that's achievable for them, regardless of how big or small that goal is. And statistics show that people with CP might have shorter life expectancies, but at the same time, there's nothing to stop them living a fulfilled life and a long fulfilled life at that, and be able to find romance and find a job and do all the things that non-disabled people do. There's no reason why CP should stop anybody from doing that, regardless of what they want to get out of life, I guess. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I've just closed it with the same slides I had at the beginning. But thanks for watching today, and if you do have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or you can contact me out with this, or contact Keith through In Control Scotland, and I'd be happy to answer them.
Hi, Danielle.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was really interesting. I was just checking. Sorry, because I've been doing the slides. I was just checking if there were any if there were any comments. So, I mean, Alistair's put a nice comment on there, saying
I didn't see it as I was going through. Sorry, I didn't. I can see it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like my pink even back then, Alistair. I made that comment when I was looking at the photos yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Danielle. That was really interesting. On World Cerebral Palsy Day to hear about some of your story, but also just some of the things about cerebral palsy, and to just explore some of those myths that you're talking about there. So you will be back next month on the 3rd of November.
Yeah, on the 3rd of November. I can't remember off the top of my head what the topic's going to be, but that'll be the first one, or the last one before Christmas. And I believe it. That one will be reflecting on on the year we've just had. So, but I'm not sure what we'll be doing before then. But I look forward to it.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Thanks for joining us for Tuesday Talks. Thanks to
No
everybody
problem.
who came along. To view it today, you can see it on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Danielle Farrell YouTube as well.
Yeah, on my YouTube channel, it's being streamed live just now. Yep.
Yep. So any future broadcasts will also be out on those 3 different places. So you've got plenty of choice.
Yep.
So next. Okay. Thanks, Danielle.
No problem. Thanks.